Courthouse hallway smelled of old paper and quiet regrets. Daniel sat alone on a wooden bench, his fingers locked together so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head: sign the papers, keep his voice steady, walk away with what was left of his dignity. What he had not prepared for was the sound of slow footsteps behind him, or the way his breath would stop completely when he turned and saw Emily standing there, 7 months pregnant. For a moment the world seemed to tilt. Emily's hand rested protectively on the gentle curve of her belly, her face pale but composed, eyes holding a sadness that felt older than both of them. Daniel stood up so fast the bench scraped loudly against the floor. "Emily," he whispered, his voice breaking in a place he didn't know still existed. The last time he had seen her, she was walking out of their house with a suitcase and tears streaming down her face. She had never told him she was expecting. Emily nodded slowly, as if bracing herself for the impact of his shock. "I came to finalize the divorce," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of months of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers. Daniel stared at her stomach, then back at her eyes, searching for words and finding none. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with everything they had never said. Their story had not always been this broken. Daniel and Emily met in church, sitting 2 rows apart during a Christmas service. He was the quiet accountant who volunteered at the soup kitchen. She was the elementary school teacher with a laugh that made strangers feel like old friends. They fell in love slowly, the kind that grows from shared faith and simple dreams. But marriage tested them in ways neither had expected. Financial stress, long work hours, and Daniel's inability to communicate his fears slowly built a wall between them. When Emily lost her mother, Daniel buried himself in work instead of grief, and Emily felt more alone than she ever had before. The night everything collapsed was loud and ugly. Words were thrown like weapons, and silence followed like a punishment. Emily left because staying felt like disappearing. When she discovered she was pregnant weeks later, fear wrapped itself around her heart. She tried to call Daniel, but pride and pain stopped her every time. She told herself she would raise the child alone rather than beg for love that might never come. Back in the courthouse hallway, Daniel finally found his voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his eyes glistening. Emily looked away, blinking back tears. "Because I didn't want to be another burden," she replied. "You already looked so tired of fighting. I thought letting go was the kinder thing." Her words pierced him deeper than any argument ever had. They sat across from each other in a small conference room, the divorce papers untouched on the table between them. The air felt different now, charged with truth and vulnerability. Daniel confessed how empty the house had felt without her, how he had replayed their last fight over and over, wishing he had chosen compassion instead of silence. Emily admitted how scared she was, how every kick from the baby reminded her of what could have been a shared joy. The biggest challenge they faced was trust, trust that wounds could heal, and that the past did not have to dictate the future. Fear tried to convince Emily that hope would only lead to more pain. Guilt told Daniel he didn't deserve a second chance. Yet, in that quiet room, something gentle began to stir. Not certainty, but possibility. When the clerk knocked to call them in, Daniel did something unexpected. He reached for Emily's hand, hesitant, as if afraid she might pull away. She didn't. "Before we sign anything," he said, his voice steady but humble, "can we talk to the pastor? Can we try counseling, really try? Not for the marriage we had, but for the family we could still become." Emily looked at him for a long moment, tears finally spilling over. She had come prepared to close a chapter, not to reopen a door. Weeks later, they sat together in a small counseling office, learning how to speak honestly and listen without defending. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, tears, and moments when old habits threatened to return. But there were also prayers whispered together again, hands held during doctor visits, and laughter that felt fragile but real. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in choices made every day. The day their son, Noah, was born, Daniel stood beside Emily, overwhelmed by a love he hadn't known was possible. As he held his child for the first time, he realized that forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It is about choosing growth over resentment. Emily, watching him, felt a quiet peace settle in her heart. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was no longer facing it alone. Their story became a testimony not of a perfect marriage, but of grace, of how brokenness does not disqualify love, and how sometimes the most unexpected moments, like walking into a courthouse ready to end everything, can become the beginning of something new. And in the end, the papers were never signed. Instead, they chose faith, patience, and the courage to rebuild, proving that even when hearts freeze in shock, they can still learn to beat together again.